So if there's any tree that makes me think of California, in fact, this tree is endemic to California. It doesn't grow anywhere else naturally. It grows up north, down to about Temecula in the south, mostly in the Central Valley, but the valleys, they're in the coastal ranges too. But look at that tree. It's absolutely gorgeous. They provide year-round interest. There's nothing like the silhouette of a tree, a valley oak tree, with or without leaves against the skyline, especially at sunset. It's just amazing. But look at this beauty. This is an amazing tree. Yeah. Valley oak. Absolutely gorgeous. Gives me goosebumps looking at it. So these mature valley oaks tend to do what valley oaks do when they get older. They spread out and have a very wide canopy compared to the other trees that grow near them, which is the blue oaks, live oaks, buckeyes, trees like that. But oftentimes they'll even have branches that go onto the ground. They droop more, and that's if they have room to grow, like this one has plenty of room. These guys back here, those are valley oaks too. They just haven't matured. They were planted. They're not native like this guy here. This tree's probably 300 plus years old. So depending on their growing conditions, if they tend to be crowded out, they'll grow more upright until they get really old like this. But from a distance on younger trees, without looking for some other things like the leaves, it's a little harder to tell them apart as you're driving by them on the freeway. All right, today's tree is the valley oak, the Quercus lobata. Now I know I usually do Sierra trees. Technically this is a Sierra tree. It just grows at the very, very bottom of the Sierra. It goes up to about 2,000 feet and tends to grow with interior live oaks, maybe some black oaks, gray pine, and buckeyes. So at 2,000 feet, I'm at 700 right here in Folsom, but I've got a spectacular tree to show you. Look at that beauty. It's an amazing tree. So let's talk about the valley oak. So it's the last week of March, and it's in the 80s already here in California, where I live in Northern California. But this is normal for these trees. You can see these little flowers. That's the male flower. It's called a catkin. These come out in the spring. Lots of pollen on those guys. So they're a monoecious tree, which means they have both sexes. So that's the male flower, the catkins. And the female flowers are kind of at the leaf where they are attached to the branches, and they'll fertilize there, and that's where they grow the acorns. So some years there's lots of acorns. They call it a mast year. It's hard to tell. Other years there's not quite as many, so we don't know what's going to happen this year. We're in a drought. Trees aren't as well, don't have as much water available to them, so I would think they would have a lighter crop this year. So there was no fresh acorns. These are last year's acorns. They're long, get up to about 2 inches long, have a little cap, and this one's actually even forming some roots. So one tree can drop a lot of acorns, and the squirrels and birds eat them and spread them around. Hopefully some of them germinate, but they don't all germinate. Some get eaten. People used to use them as food. Some people still do. You have to leach out the tannins in them first. So oak trees, acorns, they go together. So has a little cap. They're normally green, but these are last year's acorns, and hopefully we have a good crop of acorns this year. So why do they call it Quercus lobata? Well, lobata means lobed, and if you see this leaf, look how deeply those lobes are. It's very deeply lobed, where blue oaks are smaller leaves and not nearly as lobed, and the interior live oaks that grow around here have a little spur, as do the black oaks. So it's a good way to tell them apart from up close if you can see the leaves. So this particular tree is what's known as a heritage tree In the arborist world, we use a measurement called diameter at breast height, which is basically the width of the tree at breast height. This tree is 85 inches, which is massive. So like I said, this tree's probably in the range of 300 years old, maybe more, about 80 feet tall. They get up, the range is up to about 100 feet. There's a couple really spectacular trees that go over 100 feet, but yeah, this guy's about 80 feet tall, massive, beautiful, beautiful tree. So what we do to protect these trees, anything in this city, it varies by city. In my city, anything over 9 inches has to be cared for. They're a native tree. So yeah, these oaks are protected because they are a native species to California. By the way, they're related to the white oaks that you see in the Midwest and back east. Very closely related. But these are endemic to California, and California only are the native ones, although people plant them everywhere. So they're protected. In my city, anything over 9 inches, you can't remove it without cause. Like it has to be a fall hazard or dying. And anything over 31 inches is considered heritage oak. You can't do anything to those trees. So unless it's maintenance, unless it's if it's a hazard. So I measured this guy out at 85 inches at diameter at breast height, which is a really large tree. So us people in the arborist world make a pretty good living writing reports for people trying to do what's right around their oak trees. So if you don't follow the rules of your county, there's a possibility of a very large fine. You can remove a healthy tree, but there's going to be very heavy mitigation charges if you do that. So follow the rules and protect our trees. Of the oaks, the valley oaks are actually not doing great right now, and that is because where do they grow? They're called valley oaks. They used to grow in large forests all through the Central Valley. But what's in the Central Valley? We got water and we got primo soil, and it's flatter and it's easier to build on. So here in California, we've destroyed a major amount of the oak tree habitat. So with making farms and building homes, their habitat's just been lessened. And for some reason, nobody really knows why, they're not reproducing as well. Don't know if it's people gathering or the animals gathering too many acorns, just the conditions, climate change, I don't know. So speaking of climate change, we are in a major drought here in California. So I want to talk briefly about watering if you're worried about your own oaks. These trees are adapted to our Mediterranean climate here in California. They do not like summer water. There's shallow roots under an oak tree. That's mostly for gathering nutrients. There's a nice mulch under here. Those shallow roots just gather and feed the tree. The big tap roots, the way a native oak tree grows, they need access to underground water and aquifers. So a big oak tree like this gets most of its water from down deep. You don't see it, but it's tapped into some groundwater. So people get tempted to water their oak trees. Not good. In the summer, their shallow areas have to be dry, otherwise fungus grows and it'll kill the tree. And they're used to be their drought-tolerant tree. So avoid the temptation. Although this year, with it being so dry, if you notice some stress in your tree, give it a couple, maybe once or twice the whole summer. Give it a deep watering. That's just with the hose just barely running for a couple of days, and you move it around, get it down a couple feet, and then let it dry out for a month or two. And if it needs it again, give it a little more. You need to keep that shallow root zone dry to prevent that fungus. So oaks, one of the ways, being in the tree industry, I've seen this in maintenance, in landscape maintenance, I've seen this many times when it gets really hot on trees that aren't even watered. A tree like this, how it cools itself is it pulls massive amounts of water from the ground. You don't know it, but it's just air conditioning itself by filling itself with water and feeding its leaves water. That extra weight of the water often causes branch failures, and it's always large branch failures. So on really hot days, I would suggest, if your tree's not completely healthy or has some decay, be careful under that tree, because they will drop branches in the middle of summer on a hot day. So if you live in oak country, you know about these. We call them oak balls, oak galls. They also happen on leaves. There's several varieties that are really cool on leaves. I couldn't find any right now, but these are caused by insect larvae, mostly wasps. They'll lay an egg on a leaf or on a branch, and it'll cause the oak to grow these oak balls. It doesn't hurt the tree. And then in the spring, when conditions are right, you see the little holes? That's where the larva comes out. So they feed off this oak ball, and it's usually a little wasp is responsible for these oak balls. And then they fly away. So all kinds of animals use the food from these trees. So it supports a ton of wildlife. So squirrels, birds, blue jays, all kinds of animals, and some people. But there's nothing like a valley oak in a meadow in our California wildlands, naturally growing, just to bring out, to me, what California should look like, used to look like, and we need to make sure we do things to keep it looking like that. So enjoy your oak trees, be gentle with them, and they will give you more years of pleasure than you're quite capable of spending on the planet. They'll give your great grandchildren great pleasure by enjoying these amazing trees. Wow, this tree is going to be here for another couple 100 years. Just love it. Beautiful trees. Well, thanks for watching.